All right, so it's 5:32. I'll call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll? Or Heather, will you please call the roll?
All right. Ms. Kane,
Present.
Ms. Corus, Mr. Luttrell, Mr. Miles,
Present.
Ms. Oberg, Mr. Sam,
Present.
oh, Mr. Shetty, yeah.
Present.
Mr. O'Brien,
Present.
Mr. Taylor,
Present.
Ms. Wu.
Present.
Okay.
All right. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the previous meeting of December 16th, 2020. Can I have a motion?
I had a couple questions on the minutes.
Let's have a motion and then we'll do corrections.
Okay.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I motion.
All right, Diane moves approval. Anybody second?
Second it.
Seconded by Kent. All right, any questions or corrections?
Yeah, on the third paragraph, it was talking about the market attendees and it said 2020. It was 2019. It's comparing it to 2020.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So it should have been 2019. Actually, the first sentence in the third paragraph.
Okay. All right, change noted.
Any other corrections? All right, Heather, would you call the roll?
Okay. Okay, this is to approve with the change noted. Ms. Kane? Is that an aye?
Aye. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
That's okay. Mr. Miles?
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Shetty?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yep.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Are there any additions to the agenda tonight? Okay, seeing none. The first item is, or the next item rather, is public input. I think we have one person. We don't have anybody here, so there's no way for anybody to give us input today. All right, so then the next item is presentations from 2021 market season Universal SNAP implementation program from Land Connection.
That would be from me. I think I know most of you. For those of you I don't, I'm Kay Diamond. I work at the Land Connection and I manage the Champaign Farmers Market. We are rolling out a Universal SNAP program this year, and Brian and Common Ground Food Co-op have been really awesome in helping me get that started. So I was invited to jump on here and share a little more about that and the reason why we felt it was necessary. So I would say the biggest reason is to remove food. I'm sorry, I have a 4-year-old who is, he needs me. So the whole point of this program was to further remove food access barriers. And we just thought that if we had a universal program where coupons and tokens were accepted across the board at CU farmers markets, it would be a lot more easy. Not only to get the word out on the match program that we have, but also to make it less complicated for our shoppers. I think a lot of the feedback last season that I received is, well, you know, people would come with the Rooster tokens, or they'd come with match coupons from the Urbana market. And I'm sure, Brian, that you can attest to this issue that you probably had too. And just the confusion, because people don't necessarily understand that it's different entities managing these markets in the area. So I think that's going to be a really great thing for our low income, low access community. And then also just having this platform shared where we're both pushing out pretty much like the same message. I think it'll be easier for us to reach more people, hopefully. Another really great thing is that because Champaign Farmers Market, we implemented a triple link match on the third Tuesday of each month, or the third market of each month for Brian. And so now we'll be able to do that for all of the markets. So the winter market, the outdoor Urbana market, and the Champaign market. So that's going to be really exciting. It also just gives people more opportunity to really take advantage of that program. We get great feedback from it. People show up for Triple Link Day. So I hope that people will, show up and show out when we expand it further. And then I think that the only thing that's going to be a little confusing about it this year is that we're going to have a lot of different kinds of tokens in rotation. We're going to have eggplants, we're going to have roosters, and then we'll have our new token, which is the current. The good thing is I think we've worked out a pretty good plan on how we're going to filter through those tokens, and everybody will be able to use all three of those tokens at every market to make it less confusing. And then hopefully we'll just be able to filter those out, and they'll be non-existent in the world, and we'll kind of move to the current token, which Tegan made, and it looks great, and we're really excited about. So this funding is still coming from Experimental Station. So we have a really great relationship with them. Our person, Dennis, he's awesome. And so this is fully funded for the next 2 years. And I think that we foresee that being sustainable past the 2 years. So that's another good thing. And let's see. I would say another difference that's going to be this year is I think TLC has managed how we distribute checks a little differently than what the city of Urbana has done, just because they have a more complex accounting system. And so what we do at TLC is each week we put the check from the previous week in the vendor folder. So, on a Tuesday, that check is going to be in there from the previous Tuesday. So our vendors will always get that check in a week's time. And if you forget it there, as a market manager, I would remind you, and I'm sure Brian would too, that hey, you got some money left in this folder. And then right now we're working on getting this WIC and senior program up and running for later into the season. And I think also just having that across the board and getting that group of people really interested in this match program in Urbana and Champaign is going to be really cool too. And then other than that, I would say I'm available for questions if you have any. I know Jacqueline's available for questions, and also Brian. So yeah, I guess I'll just open it up. Or Jacqueline, if you have anything to add about no? Okay, cool.
All right, any questions for Kay? All right, well, thank you so much for coming and sharing this great news.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Next item is from Brian on the quarterly staff report.
Let's get to my fancy window here someplace. Okay. So quarterly staff report. Last advisory board meeting, we had kind of gone over the end of season report, and there were some complications with the financials for the market, and those have been updated. And let me see if I can. Jason, do I have? I can share my screen, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can. All right, I'm going to share that. So the numbers have been updated. It took us a little bit of time to kind of, so that that annual report is the same except for this slide, number 7, and it just kind of details the revenue. Revenue was clearly down last season, and our expenses were increased. So the market did operate at a loss for the 2020 season. that's the news there. But wait, there's good news. So the market fund actually is carrying a balance. So the loss will be kind of taken out of that balance. And I was told by the finance department that the fund was carrying approximately like $76,000 in balance. So the difference between, you know, our loss will be covered by that for this season. It will reduce the fund balance and make it more difficult to absorb losses in the future, which hopefully there won't be as big a loss in the future. And I guess that's that bit of news. Any questions about that?
Why do you attribute that to?
So the market is primarily funded by vendor fees. And last season, because of COVID restrictions, we were restricted on the types of vendors that could participate in the market. And then once we were able to open up the range of vendors that could participate, we were still kind of limited, by space, but also by vendors, you know, not willing to come out and take the risk to be at the market. So it was kind of like a double whammy. Like at first they couldn't get in, and then by the time they could get in, most of them were just like, oh, by July, numbers were kind of up and down all over the place as far as like COVID numbers go. So it was kind of a little bit of a double hit there.
But that's 30,000 shortfall. How many vendors was you short?
So last season we hosted a total of 67 vendors, and normally with food trucks and
That works out to 50 then.
Community groups, we usually have slightly over 200 distinct vendors or people that come and pay us at the market. So we were way down on a number of those metrics that would have like added to our revenue. And there were some other weird things. There were just some charges that were charged to the market fund that should not have been. So trust me, it looked a lot worse in December, but we got those all straightened out. And these are the most accurate numbers we have at the moment. There might be some adjustments that occur once they kind of wrap up things for the fiscal year, but that's just for the market season. So depending on which way you look at this, it'll look a little different. If you look at the fund balance next year might not look so bad because it'll span 2 fiscal years. So like the hit isn't quite the same, but this is just for the market season. So that's why it seems particularly ugly.
Was it set up in labor costs because of COVID?
Yeah, I mean, there were additional labor costs because we had extra staffing involved, but there were some additional costs for rental of portable toilets and hand wash stations. And those things were surprisingly expensive, like silly expensive when you think like, hey, you're just washing your hands. So we are hoping that we will be able to apply for funds to cover the material expenses, such as like ropes and barriers and hand wash stations and toilets. And then also hopefully there'll be some funding that we can reclaim the increased staff time. We just got word that might be an eligible expense yesterday. So I'm kind of working on the numbers for that. It's not going to be $30,000 worth of expenses, but it might kind of, I don't know, it'll probably lean closer to 10. It's, yeah.
Right.
Will they kick in? Will they kick in for last year then? The money you get, will it help from last year's losses, or is that just for 2021?
Yeah, if we get refunded those costs, they'll go into the fund balance. So it won't like get added into the budget or anything for the 2021 market, but it will be, put back into our rainy day fund eventually, so that should this happen again, we have those funds to rely on. Or if, the market doesn't bounce back in 2021 because we don't have the same type of vendor turnout and our revenue isn't quite what it's projected to be, we'll have funds to kind of cover that again. That makes sense.
Brian, what is the average number of vendors that we have in a typical market year?
So all told, like with community groups and everything, we average pretty close to 200. Like
But that's not 200 a week, right? That's just 200 unique.
Yeah, that's 200 for the season. For the week, it gets a little more complicated to calculate because if it rains, like people don't show up. But generally, we usually have close to 100 per week during the height of the season. So somewhere beginning, the first week of June until maybe the second week of September, it's usually pretty full out there. And this year, like we had no community groups, and community groups, even though they only occupy one row out there, they are kind of a good source of revenue because they tend to buy a space for like the whole season. And the spaces are smaller, so we can pack a few more of them in there. So there was some loss just based on that fact. And we were down like a couple of food trucks, things like that to just kind of add up after a whole season.
Tegan, do you have a question?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to ask about was in the charts there, you didn't pull out pass-through accounts, so it looked like SNAP and everything was part of both revenue and expenses, when in fact it actually shouldn't be. So I realize it's small, but I think there was a $2,000 difference between the actual SNAP expenses and the SNAP revenue. But in general, that shouldn't be included in the actual chart for revenue.
Which chart are you referring to?
The two pie graph, or the two circular charts you just showed us.
Okay.
There showed SNAP expenses and revenue, and in fact, since it's a pass-through, it should not be included.
Wait, that's the wrong season. Well, so the city in their financial system lists the SNAP grants as revenue, and then they are taken out in the expenses. That's the way the city does it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, that because they're only taking out the expenses if things are swiped. Like if someone doesn't redeem vouchers, that actually shouldn't count towards revenue because you're not actually making money. It's just unspent. It's just unspent. Like it just sits there until someone spends it through the rest of the year. So it really shouldn't be in the revenue and expenses for the year.
But the city considers it revenue and it's on our expense line. That's why I recorded it here.
Okay. I think for this coming year, though, I think it would be really great considering where I work. We have a lot of advertising dollars at our expense for not just the Champaign market, but just local foods in general through the Land Connection. And I think there's a lot of possibility for us to cut our advertising costs down at the market by working collaboratively through the Universal SNAP program to promote both the Champaign Farmers Market and the Urbana Farmers Market. And I think there's the opportunity to cut some of the advertising costs down, if not some of the services costs as well, through both funding through the Champaign Farmers Market, but also if there are service groups that are willing to sponsor the market, like let's say, hey, whoever does the toilets, hey, are you willing to donate the toilets to us? I know it gets weird with the city, and I don't understand 100% of how sponsoring the market works. But there are markets that do sort of say, hey, if you're willing to sponsor a hand washing station, we'll put you X, Y, and Z places. I know that gets weird because it's a city and you guys don't do sponsorships, but I didn't know if there was a way for us to mitigate costs for things like hand washing stations or portable toilets, etc. Or hell, even barriers and caution, but just a thought I have.
No, that's a good idea. I'd be curious who would be interested in sponsoring a hand wash station. Maybe one of our soap vendors. That'd be good. Yeah, those are all things to consider. I mean, clearly, if with TLC kind of taking over the SNAP program in part, there will be a reduction in some of our advertising spending. But you know, that advertising spending in the past was also funded by the grants that we got. So it's again, it's kind of like not going to make much of a difference. And potentially, you know, we will probably have a little bit of gain in personnel time because you know, some of that work will be taken over by the Land Connection. But I'm not going to say we're going to save thousands and thousands of dollars because I'm not 100% sure how it's going to work out yet, because there's going to be new processes that are in place to take over the old ones. So it might be, you know, instead of a gain of what would seem like 7 or 8 hours per week, it might only wind up being 3 hours a week. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
Brian, is there a way to disaggregate the grant funds from the revenue so that you can clearly see what is grant money and then what is money that people are actually bringing in from the vendors?
Yes. So we got $9,000 in grants last year.
Okay.
So it makes for pretty simple math, I guess. But
I think it would just be helpful for people to understand, you know, exactly how much money is being brought in by the vendors versus how much the grants are coming in terms of the overall picture of revenue.
Yeah, I think the total of vendors' fees was a little bit over $59,000. There's about $1,500, maybe $1,100 in interest that I think might have just been a projected number. I don't know if that's the actual number yet. So yeah, a lot of stuff was down last year.
And can you send the advisory group the updated report with the new information?
Yeah, I agree with Mary Ellis that that would be beneficial, especially because of how the grants work. Because they're restricted fundings for the most part, we don't get to see an actual picture of what they're funding in relation to what the program or the vendor fees are, which I think would be beneficial just in general.
Okay, I think the updated report is on the website with the other materials.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That was included in the email sent to everybody about this meeting.
Who goes after the grants? Or who writes the grant for the grants applications?
I guess I do. Yeah, me.
Because it seems like there should have been a lot more available because the farmers markets with the food and everything the way it was last year than just the amount that you got.
Well,
there should be more out there available.
There might be more out there, but the truth is we rarely, I apply for grants pretty regularly, and we rarely use more than $13,000 or $14,000 a year. Last year we actually had, let's see, I applied for $9,000 total, but we had a rollover of like $4,300. So we had like $13,000 or $14,000 in grant money available to us. And we just, you know, we didn't use it all. And that money that we don't use just rolls over into the general fund, and then we can draw from it the following year.
We went in a whole 40,000. You'd think we need to use that.
But well, the thing is like that grant money is for specific use. So I can't use that grant money to pay staff or, you know, buy toilets or anything. It has to be used for the match. That's the only thing those grants are for.
But the new American Recovery Act put in a lot of money for all the municipalities. So those are things that we can charge back. If there are specific things that we had to do for the market during COVID, we should be able to get refunded basically. So that would mean that approximately the market lost 30,000 if we just use the round numbers, that we would be able to get reimbursed for 10,000.
Yeah, I need to find out more whether we can, you know, like if it will cover staff time and hard expenses, but will it cost things like lost vendor fees? Because I can calculate what the loss in vendor fees might be by, you know, the vendors that normally come out, how long they come out for, and what that would have brought in as revenue. But if that isn't if that's an expense that we can't get, then, you know, that's going to make a big difference for the amount of money we can get back. If we can, that's awesome. Like, you know, maybe we'll only wind up losing $8,000 or $9,000 if that's a possibility, but I don't, that seems unreasonable.
At least in the earlier recovery acts that were passed, you couldn't do that. Right? You could pay for extra staff if that was required. You know, hand washing stations, masks, all that stuff could be covered, but not lost revenue to the best of my knowledge. I have no idea.
And I was sort of wondering about whether the city had applied for that, given that markets were essential services, but more staff was needed. So I didn't know if the city had actually applied for any sort of compensation for the first two acts.
I can pop in if that's okay. Lori Pearson, Community Development. I was slightly involved in the first, the discussions on the first stimulus act. So the city only got, I think, about 1.7 million, and that didn't go very far. So I do have higher hopes for this new one. We are just getting into it now to look at the eligibility of things, and so stay tuned, but that is more in the $12 million range. So I think we have better chances there. But the first one, yeah, it was just sucked up immediately by a bunch of other stuff.
Thank you, Lori.
All right, other questions to Brian about the market report, end of year report? Okay, next item is actually the quarterly and the end of season report was together, wasn't it, Brian? B and C here, is that correct?
Yeah, they kind of ran into each other.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't
here. Yeah, like because well, I had it on my quarterly report that I updated it, and then I guess it got listed twice. My fault. So also with the staff report is the land connection, that update. And we heard from Kay tonight, but I just want to enter it in there so that we could, if there were any more questions after that presentation, you could ask me. Basically, things are going to stay the same, except for the match. We're going to lower our match. Right now, our match at the market is $25. We're going to lower that to $20 because that's the match that Champaign offers. So both markets will be equal footing. And then on the third Saturday of the month, we'll offer a triple match. And it's kind of nice because that works out to be about $20 to $25 a month more than what our current match system would offer. And we'll start developing kind of informational materials for our vendors that don't already go to the Champaign market and start distributing them probably in the next couple of weeks. All right, that's that. Next up I have is COVID guidelines. We are still waiting from the state for an update to the COVID guidelines. Julie Pride and a number of city officials had a meeting last week to talk about potential summer events, and it seems that she is very supportive. I don't think that we need to worry about the market being told it won't go forward. I think it'll go forward without a hitch. I am kind of hoping that the updated guidelines from the state will reduce the current space requirements. Right now for spacing, they're requiring 30 feet between vendors, which is a tremendous amount of space. And you know, it's even worse if they want like a full circle of 30 feet around a vendor. That's nuts. So I have been in contact with the Illinois Farmers Market Association, and they told me about 2 weeks ago that they were hoping to have guidelines in about 2 weeks, and nothing has come up yet. I think Julie even mentioned when she was in that meeting that she had been expecting to have guidelines, and that meeting was last week, and she hadn't received them. So still a little bit of a holding pattern, but as soon as I get that information, I will start kind of updating our requirements and sending them out. And then I will also schedule our preseason vendor meeting, which I just don't see the point of doing until I know how the market's going to operate. So I know you're all eagerly waiting for that. I think that ends the end of my report.
All right, any other questions about upcoming market or the previous market? Stan?
In the last meeting, in the minutes, it says Miss Wu, she requested a one-page summary sheet of the season of the market vendors' income, or she wanted to know how our sales were, I guess, something like that. End of season report for the summary of the share of the advisory board to the advisory board. He was talking about the sales from 2020. And did that survey come out? I didn't get it.
No, I
guess
I
no.
thought, so my understanding was that you were asking for a kind of one-page summary of the end of season report, which I
wasn't.
I
know,
was.
Mary Alice was. And I sent that to her.
Did you send it to everybody? I don't remember.
I sent it to you.
You sent it to me. All right, well, I will. I'll
How
send,
did you know if we didn't respond to it?
I don't know. I'm sorry. She was the one that asked for it. So I sent it to her.
I
I think she specifically asked for it so she could present it to council. She did not ask for it so she could present it to the board. And since you guys already had access to the long form of the end of season report, I didn't think you guys needed it, but I can distribute that more widely. It's fine. It's basically the end of season report, just without the fanciness. I mean, it's a little fancy, but not much.
yeah, if you could just forward it to everybody. And now that we have a little bit of updated numbers.
Well, it won't include any financial information.
That's true.
Really, it had attendance, the SNAP numbers, and vendor breakdown. That was it. It was just kind of like those 3 or 4 things, and that was it.
Maybe I read that wrong, but it insinuated this looking at sales, and there's no way you can make that estimation when nobody turns in their sales.
Yeah, no.
Maybe I read it wrong.
There was also, I think at the last meeting we talked about a brief end of season survey I sent out to vendors, and it asked very general questions about sales, whether they felt their sales were better than expected, worse than expected, or normal. That kind of that survey was sent out. Maybe that's where the confusion is. I don't know.
Okay.
But I can send out the one-page thing to everybody.
All right, moving on to new business. There is a non-food vendor carrying policy.
Yeah,
Post.
it's gonna be good. All right, so I don't know if I could figure out how to put this in presentation mode. Give me a second.
Control L is full screen, Brian, for PDF.
Beautiful. Here we go. Oh, that's no. See, no, that's.
Sorry.
And then Lori. Oh, maybe this doesn't have it.
It's just a PDF. It's not a PowerPoint.
Yeah, I know. I meant to do my. That's fine. I can just do this. It's fine. I meant to pull up my PowerPoint and I didn't. Anyway, so carrying policy. So over the last few
So
seasons.
Brian, it's a black screen to us right now.
Darn it. Hold on a second. All right.
All right, now we can see it.
Got it? All right. So over the past few seasons, I've been getting requests from a number of vendors kind of requesting to either share a booth or kind of host other products from vendors that, they aren't making those products and they would like to have them at their booth and allow them to be sold. And I don't particularly have any feelings on this, but I would like to clarify and potentially regulate these activities and have like a much more standardized policy about them. So this is why, oh man. Oh, there we go. All right, so the current policy is, as it is in the handbook, is just, it does not allow reselling, but Carrying is relatively undefined, but generally carrying is more considered like, hey, my buddy has this stuff. I'd like to let him sell it at my stand, so that the person who already owns the stand isn't necessarily buying that material. They're just kind of putting it for sale, and they'll figure out a deal. So currently, that is not permitted unless it's approved by the market director. And so in the past, when this has been approved, I have required that both vendors have a valid application on file with the market. And then I usually make it a requirement that both vendors are present at the market on market day, and then that they have signage and labeling to distinguish. So you can tell, when you come to the stand, it's like, oh, there's clearly two separate people selling materials here, selling items. And those carried products are expected to meet all the market requirements, such as being made within the state, not resold or anything like that. So I think that the current value of this policy is that it maintains the integrity of the market as producer only. Customers get accurate product information, high level of customer service. If you have a question, you can ask it. You've got the maker right there. Problems and complaints are easier to trace because this way there's not 20 different things being sold, at one stand and making it impossible to kind of figure out who's doing what. And it helps support a sense of community because you can come to the market and you're talking directly to the person that's there making the stuff. And I think these are all kind of things that are highly valued and are important to the market. But I would like to change or propose a change to this policy where I would like to limit the vendor categories that can carry. This would also allow the carried vendor to not have to be present at the market. It would potentially run into also the creation of a carrying fee so that there was, it kind of give a sense of fairness here. And I would propose this as a trial run for the 2021 season. Just try it out, see what happens. If it's a disaster, we can back out or we just don't do anything. So the proposed language for this right now, this is not a final thing, would be, there would still be no reselling. So that would have to be, that would be pretty clear. And then the idea of carrying would get clarified. So carrying, the hosting of a second vendor's product at a stall, will only be permitted for arts and crafts or hand good vendors with the approval of the market director. Carrying of food goods of any type will not be permitted by any vendor in any category. All vendors must have a valid application on file with the market and meet the market requirements. All carried goods must be clearly labeled so that you can tell. Stalls carrying goods other than their own must display signage stating that the carried maker's business name and origin and contact information. Vendors wishing to have their goods carried at the market will be assessed the carrying fee. So that way it makes the vendor that's coming to the market kind of responsible for what's going on. And it's not just the person that's kind of at the booth. Potential advantages to this are that it would increase access to the market for makers. So a lot of craftspeople, if they do fairly detailed crafts, it can be a really high investment for a low kind of production number. So this would give them increased access. It would mean a wider variety of offerings for consumers. This change in policy clarifies the policy, makes it very specific about what it is, and then it narrows the ranges of potential carriers, making regulation more efficient. And part of the reason why I think narrowing the range is good is because we don't necessarily want everybody to start popping up selling jams and honey and bringing fruits and vegetables that they grow in their backyard. It also, for food, there's a lot of regulation and permitting that's involved. So it gets more complicated when that is allowed. And then disadvantages, I think it does represent kind of like a existential threat to the integrity and spirit of the market. Could lead to a possible revenue loss due to consolidation, right? Like if 3 small vendors decide to just buy one booth, I've lost, 2 booth fees for a season. It would be a change in the market going experience. It would be less of a personal experience and, move it closely to like, gift shop or something like that as far as that category is concerned. It would probably mean increased staff time to ensure compliance. And then potential resentment on the part of other vendors that some vendors get to come in and don't pay the same amount they do to be represented at the market. I don't know if that's a real thing. I guess that's all I've got. So, and then I am kind of seeking your input on this. So.
All right.
Who
Question?
polices that?
Wait, what?
Who polices that, them regulations?
That would be market staff, myself, mostly.
Board has no input?
Well, I'm asking for your input right now. Because the current policy just kind of is very wishy-washy, and I don't know, I can't foresee all the potential problems like changing this or not kind of regulating it in a slightly better and more efficient way will make. So that's what we're discussing.
Because a lot of us anchor vendors know who the resellers are, so what do I get in return for turning somebody in?
Oh, I'm not asking you to snitch. Like this.
I am.
Okay.
How are you going to find out? Because you're not going to know.
That's just it. Like I'm fine. Like if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, this person is like got a product that I don't think is theirs," I usually go and I talk to them, and I will investigate it.
In what way? We used to do farm inspections in the market. The person would pay for it, and you don't have anybody on staff to do that now.
Well, we're going to start doing that this year. So
who do you got designated to do that? You ain't going to do it.
I'm going to do it.
You're gonna have time to do it?
Yeah, maybe. It's going to be mostly for new farms. The policy was never that every farm got inspected every single year. So like this year I think we've got 3 new farms coming to the market, maybe 4. That 4th one is a weird one. So yeah, I'll go out and see what they're about. And then, that'll be that.
Maybe
because I've been a recipient. Go ahead.
I was going to say maybe there could be a line in the vendor handbook that if someone does, or if another vendor does bring something to your attention, it would elicit an on-farm or on-site visit to inspect as sort of an addendum to the current handbook. One thing though, I do like the idea that if another producer is not available to be there, that their product is still allowed to be sold. I think that's a really great option. Unfortunately, took it down, so I don't remember all of the rest. But
I can share it again, I think.
I actually think, for the most part, a lot of the things that you brought up are really beneficial for value-added producers, and especially with the possible changes to the cottage food legislation in this coming year. I think it's beneficial to approach it in this way. I do think, though, that there is the possibility that vendors could team together and have so many in one space that loses the market money. However, at the same time, if you're a vendor of goods, you do need a certain level of you just need a certain amount of table space. Like, that's just inherent. So I think there's maybe there's a way to encourage, if you have an add-on vendor and you want 2 spaces, not that there's a discount, but there's a way to mitigate sort of those costs, like, hey, you pay half price for the add-on, but you're still paying X amount for the 2 vendors in one space, 2 vendors in one sort of space area, if that makes sense. Not entirely sure, but yeah, I feel like there's a way to make it work. I really appreciate this change in policy, and I think there's a way to make it work. I'm just not entirely sure, and hopefully the rest of the board can help with sort of fine tuning it, but I'm not sure we're there. If that makes any sense to anyone.
The reason I spoke up, because I've been a recipient of this at another market. And, you know, it's just because the guy didn't like me, and they couldn't prove it. But they come out the farm, and you can't do this. Well, no. I told the guy, you want me to count the chickens? But they couldn't believe we was doing what we was doing. But, you know, enforcement, you know, it all sounds good, but the enforcement is the key. How are you going to really, as Kent said, you ain't got the time to come out and do what you got to do, and you ain't got the knowledge to know what's going on, because you're not a farmer. I'm just telling you, because I know people that said they was growing green beans, but they're gone, and that could happen. Tegan will tell you this, you know, well, I've done tore up my green beans. I had them last week. How would you know that? I could have bought them at someplace else and sold them, just as an example, and you would have no clue.
So to be fair, I'm pretty positive the market has never had a farm expert go out and do these. I don't know.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah, we did.
Who was that
Yeah,
person?
because she's a customer of ours. You know, so I mean, she did a farm inspection when I started.
Well, there was also, Stan, at that time, a vendor
Meredith Blumenthal was the one back years ago.
and there was Hans before that.
Wait, for
Because
the
he came out
market
to my farm.
Seriously, like I asked for history lessons from the city, and everybody's like, "No, Natalie did
No,
it."
because you didn't ask us, Brian.
Well,
I mean, all this sounds fine, but enforcement is you know, I can name, and Kent who knows who I'm talking about. They would go up to auction sale barn at the auction produce, they'd buy it and they'd go sell it at the market.
I know.
We all knew this, but we didn't turn them in because it's just not our business.
All right, that's fine. We have been looking for like somebody to hire to come out and do the farm inspections, but the $50 fee is kind of a hard one to like convince somebody that they're going to drive an hour or two to like go look at somebody's farm. So we haven't been conducting them, and then last year there was COVID. So if you
where did all this come from? My question is, where did all this come from?
So right now, I feel like we've started talking about two different things. We've started talking about kind of enforcement of reselling for growers, and this proposed change really only affects arts and craft vendors. Like, I would not allow value-added food or growers to carry product unless there was something like in the past has happened. I think we had a grower who was sick or had been injured, and someone was bringing their product to market. Otherwise, this would really only apply to arts and crafts. And this is coming up just because I've had a specific request about this type of activity at the market, but also it's something that's kind of happening at the market on the side, and it's something that I've been getting requests from other vendor categories to have somebody come and, you know, like, hey, can my, you know, I sell soap, can my buddy over here sell his jam at my stand? And it's like, that's weird, but no.
Is there a way to cap the number that an individual seller could carry? So you can't carry more than 2 or 3 or 1 or whatever the number is?
Yeah, that would be easy. I was thinking about that, and I just didn't put it in there because I figured I'd get feedback from you guys. I mean, I would personally want to like cap it because I don't want to have to track down 20 people because one person is carrying a crazy amount of stuff. Like if there's 3 people and they're all carrying 4 or 5 people, that's plenty. So yeah, I would cap the number without a doubt.
At what number?
I don't know. I don't know what the magic number is. 3, 4?
So-
I mean, you're setting these, you're talking about these new rules, but it has to be hard because it's a slippery slope in a gray area. You know, Kent and I have been talking about market saturation for years. You know, if too much products of a certain item, somebody will carry this, and this, and this. Well, you know, that affects the other vendors that their main
Just
product is a certain thing.
Just that one item, yeah.
Right. So, you know, it all, I mean, I agree with you on it, but how are you going to enforce it? That's my point is, you know, where are you going to go with this? You know, my point was in my case, I said the person complaining should pay for the fees for that inspector to come out and do all of this, because that would eliminate a lot of complaints. You know, if you know you're going to have to pay a market person to come out or do whatever, say 150, mine was $175. It costs the market fund to come out and inspect me, which is totally crazy, but they did, and they found nothing. But because the guy just didn't like me. But if the guy complaining had to pay that, he probably wouldn't have made that complaint.
No,
You see what I'm saying?
No, I would be perfectly fine, like enforcing a rule like that. Like, hey, if there's a legitimate complaint, we will send our inspector out. You pay the fee, and if the complaint is found to be valid, then the market will reimburse the complainer's fee. Like, I think that sounds fair to me.
But it has to be in the handbook.
Yeah.
We can't talk about it here.
Well, we should talk about it here.
But I mean, it has to be in the handbook.
Yeah, no, I can write this and pop it right in there. I left a whole page blank for this kind of stuff.
Brian, I think that if, in terms of a trial program, I don't think it would make sense to go over 2 or 3 carrying people.
Yeah, I was.
I would keep it small.
Yeah, I was thinking of limiting it at like 3 or 4. So
Go lower.
3 sounds like the perfect number.
Oh, one thing I've seen is I would, extend it to all vendors just so there isn't confusion, because you're going to get people who are going to fight over what their products actually are. But 2, I think one of the things I've seen be really successful is if you have another vendor, even if you're manning the booth, they're required to at least buy another space, possibly at a discount. So if you're getting like 2 spaces instead of 1, the second space is 50% off or something, but there's still possibly one person manning that, whether that's food or non-food. That has been really popular, especially with communities that are trying to encourage community growers or sort of growers that have menial incomes or are just starting out. That has been a really beneficial avenue for vendors like that, especially now that we're dealing with new cottage food vendors or value-added products. The ability to have 2 cottage food vendors that are sharing like a double space, but only one person is there just in case someone can't because of child concerns, etc. Like, I think there should be, I agree completely with Stan and Kent that there needs to be a hard sort of definition of what people can do. But I think my suggested proposal is that there be sort of a, hey, you can split a space, but maybe if you get to like 3, you need 2 spaces. Like, you have to buy 2 spaces. Maybe there's a discount and only one person would be there. But I think that's something we should consider, the addendum, that there needs to be an additional purchase space so you're not getting 6 vendors in one space. I mean, that is just ridiculous. It does water down the market, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you classify Salagrate? I mean, because they got all kinds of growers out there.
Yeah, but it doesn't
They're
matter.
selling
They're a
under
grower.
their name.
They're a grower.
Huh?
They're a grower. They're not carrying for anybody. Like, it's just, the proposal is that like no carrying will be allowed for any category except for arts and crafts. That's it. Like, those are the only categories that would be allowed to carry.
Wait, Solar doesn't sell anything but what they grow, though, Stan.
You really think so?
Oh, you're starting to sound like another vendor at the market. Oh boy.
I'm just using examples.
Into that
You
conversation.
you open Pandora's box. How are you going to police it? That's the thing.
I feel like
That is very fair.
Look, this is the thing. Like, I don't, I'm going to say this and it's going to sound like bad, but I don't care. Like, I can either do this because in some respects it's happening. So I can enforce the current policy, which is not very good. I could just also rewrite the policy so that carrying is not allowed, period. And I would be fine with that because it would mean a lot less problematic things with enforcement. It would be so much easier. But I brought this up just in case it seemed like a good thing. It is problematic. And like, for more reasons than just like, how am I going to enforce it? Like, I think it's kind of important that when you come to the market, you be able to talk directly to the maker. I don't care what you're buying. Like, that's why I go there. Otherwise I just order online. Like, who gives a crap, right? So for me, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Vendors have been kind of requesting this stuff. And so I figured maybe we should nail this down, or just nail it down one way or the other, right? Like, yes, it's either allowed or like, nope, can't do it. And I'm fine either way.
Diane, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I was just kind of thinking here. So you have like a couple people that want to share a spot basically and sell multi stuff. Is that what you're saying, Brian?
Yeah, but right, yes.
Okay, then all of those people should be there. And to me, I choose to have 2 spaces. So why would they get a discount for a half of a space or a space?
Thank you.
I don't want to give them a
That's
discount.
not fair to Stan, Kent. I mean, that's not fair to
Right.
any of us to have more than
We
one.
got 3 spaces. How do you
Right.
know I can't divide it up between 3 people?
I know,
Exactly.
that'd be crazy. That's so like, right, one of the things that I kind of want to include in this is a fee, so that if you do want to have somebody else's stuff, like, that person who's going to be carried needs to pay a fee. And you know, like, it would be a fee that would cover them for the whole season, or if they only got their stuff carried for 6 weeks, it's like they pay that fee and it's a flat rate. I don't want to like give away spaces at the market. I'm not going to discount because you're going to have 4 people come in and then you're going to get a discount on 2 spaces. Get at that. That sounds like a terrible idea. That sounds like a real quick way to like kill market revenue, which is something I need to worry about. So like the fee, we've been kind of tossing that idea around and nobody's kind of come down on it, but like, it would be a significant fee. It wouldn't be like $12. It would be $200, $250, right? Like a booth for the season costs $607, a third of that to like have your stuff carried at the market. That sounds fairish. I mean, it's still a good deal, right? Like, if I found someone willing to carry my goods at the market, this would be a bargain. And I recognize that. But, you know, like, at the same point as market manager, I don't know that I want to chase down everybody and make sure this is all being regulated, but I will. I don't have any idea how much revenue this will bring in for the market. It might bring in none. It might bring in some. I don't know.
Well, what about products that they're not an Illinois product. They are, and you know what I'm talking about. The olive oil. I'm just saying them for, I'm sorry, but they have a company in Illinois, but they don't grow olives. They don't do anything with those olives in this state. So
that was created before my time.
I know it, but there's, the salmon people also. I mean, I think salmon's great to sell, but salmon's not grown in Illinois.
Thanks, Diane. That's my point. You've opened Pandora's box.
Exactly.
Now, where do you stop it?
Right.
Okay, so let's do this, if that's okay. Let's just take a straw poll in terms of if we should even consider offering, letting people do carrying, not figure out the details, but let's just do a straw poll to do this, you know, yay or nay in terms of figuring out a policy to allow people to carry. All right, so let's see, I guess.
But if I vote, who's going to make the policy?
Well, we'll get there, but first let's just figure out if a policy needs to be made. That's my question. So I just, do you guys want to have a carrying policy? It's just a straw poll, Heather. There's no official vote here, but thank you. So, okay, if you do want to have a carrying policy created, raise your hand virtually. You got one person who wants to have it done. All right, and those who don't want to have it done, no policy. All right, well.
But, okay,
And
that's fine.
that don't mean it's not a good idea, but enforcement is just, the devil's in the detail. It can't, I've been doing this 23 years. I know how this shit works. Just trust me.
Okay, no, I'm fine. Like,
But I think what the question though on the ground or from Mary Alice is, no matter what the policy is, do we need to have a policy? So
Actually,
whether it,
yeah, so my question was whether or not we should allow carrying to happen with the new policy. That was the question I posed.
Well, it would be like me. I've got a couple people that I know that sell different dog biscuits like what I sell. And, you know, they've approached me and I've approached, you know, different things, but I'm like, but I don't know your product well enough to take to the farmer's market and sell them. So if I have somebody standing there asking me questions, I'm like, I don't know. It's just kind of one of those, I don't know.
I agree. What you're saying.
Yeah.
Because your product, your standard, your name is on their product. So,
Exactly.
So I think it'll self-regulate itself, you know, because you're not going to sell something that you're not know its quality or meets your standards.
Right. Yeah. And then if they don't like that product, they're going to come back on me and say, well, why are you selling it? And then they're going to come back on you, Brian, or whoever else at the market and get mad at you. I mean, I had an incident this summer where somebody swore we sold them a product that we don't make and got their dog sick. And she continued to come to me. And I had to go to Brian and we found out who sold what it was. I mean, this lady had me in tears and I was shaking and I was showing her that we did not sell what she was accusing me made her dog sick. And so there's kind of an example there that, you know, we all pride ourselves on what we sell. And then to bring, you know, well, you know, this vendor's going to have some jam and some eggs and some flowers and some dog, but that just doesn't work, in my opinion. But
okay, but I want to reiterate this one last time. Not proposing this for the whole market. The whole market as like food vendors, this would not be a thing for any food vendor. Just because of things like that. It gets complicated with the permitting and licensing, and I don't want to deal with that. And I think it's more important that food vendors be present to talk about their product, because there's a lot more danger in buying some weird little pie from someone and eating that than there is in buying a cutting board and, you know, or like a ceramic bowl. Yeah, that ceramic bowl might be made with a glaze that will kill you in 20 years, but that's 20 years. The pie could kill you tomorrow. Right. So I don't want to deal with that at all. I don't think, and that's part of the reason this new policy or the proposed policy, let's say, kind of limits it just to arts and craft vendors. But if it seems like a bad idea, period, or if you think that growers and value added food people won't get it, or I won't be able to say, no, you can't do that to them, that's fine. I am happy to I do want to rewrite the policy so it's a little clearer as to like what carrying is, and then just prohibit it flat out. Like, I'm fine with that too. Because I agree, there's all kinds of problems, and I'm not sure that there's potential benefit, but only if it's really limited to these categories, does it barely make sense.
Well, maybe you just need to rewrite it and then make it clarify for everybody to know exactly what. you can and cannot do.
So I guess my question to the board is, should there be a different carrying policy for arts and crafts?
I don't see how you can do it and separate
Oh.
them out.
Should be for a straight carrying policy for everybody, in my opinion, but that's
Okay.
not what everybody else
That's fine.
feels.
Gary, you're muted. Did you want to weigh in on any of this?
You got
I-
Rick Bear.
I guess
Sorry,
I just
trying
have
to
a.
unmute it.
oh,
I'm here.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't get unmuted. It took me a minute. All right. So if it's just for the arts and crafts, I just feel like, can you just have a caveat for the arts and crafts, and then it doesn't even affect the growers, especially, it won't have any effect on Stan or the other growers that are here. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to make policy for the whole market when it's really only going to affect a few.
But I'm getting a sense from the board that it would be too complicated if there were separate policies for the growers versus the arts and crafts.
I'm not entirely sure there would be. I think if you did a consumable versus non-consumable policy where for non-consumables, there could be two vendors per one space with a possible add-on. And then if you exceeded that, you'd need a second space. So 3 to 4 could have 2 spaces, et cetera, et cetera. I think there could be a tiered system where you could have 2 craft or non-consumable vendors in one 10 by 10 space. Once you get beyond that, 3 to 4, you need to occupy at least 2 spaces and then go from there. I think one of the things that we aren't really considering is that with COVID, craft and non-consumable vendors were limited. So if a few vendors can only get 1 or 2 spaces, I mean, that was sort of a livelihood question for some people. I'm not trying to dilute the rest of the market, but if they are non-consumable vendors, I think at least putting a policy in place like Brian is suggesting, where like two vendors can share a space, a 10 by 10 space. If you get more than that, 3 to 4, you have to at least buy a second space, et cetera, et cetera. I think it is important that we at least consider that for non-consumables, simply because of the strains put on from COVID and possibly going forward. We don't know what the next year's restrictions will be from the Department of Commerce. So I think this is something that we at least should consider for non-consumables, simply because of the strain that it has put on craft vendors this past year.
But where's that put somebody like Kent that's got flyers? You can consume them or you can't. So, no, I mean, there's edible flyers. So,
Well, Kent comes into the market as a grower, so he's in the grower category. And he
so then you're talking growers, not consumer. So
No.
Read it. Just redefined it.
Specialty crops, meat, everything that's not specialty crops, meat, eggs, etc. Everything that is not consumable or grown, etc. Based on the IDOA definition of what is grown.
Okay, you didn't say that though, Tegan. You didn't say grown.
Just making a change.
Okay.
All right, so Tegan's got a suggestion on non-consumable non-growers. I don't know how to quite succinctly say that.
I think that's as close as you're going to get.
Right.
Non-producer or growers.
So arts, crafts, or handmade goods vendors doesn't make any sense.
I think
That's not what Tegan said.
I know. I'm just asking. That's what I currently have in the write-up that I made. So if I need to change it to non-consumable, that's what I currently have.
I think what you have, Brian, is fine.
All right. Anyway, this I don't want to make this decision tonight. So, I'm more than open to having you guys send me an email about it, or send me an email and say you want to talk. I'll give you a phone call and we can discuss it. I think we can do stuff like that, right?
I think we need to hash it out tonight, Brian, because, onesies and twosies ain't gonna get it. Let's make a decision tonight. Because when's our next meeting? I don't even have it up here, but is it before the market?
We've got to decide that tonight. No, it's in the middle of the market sometime, I think.
So, you know, because I don't want policy written where I had no say-so in it.
Okay, so I guess my question is, as it stands now, are people comfortable with the policy of non-growers, non-consumable being allowed to carry product as long as they fill out the they fill out the paperwork, they pay an additional fee, and they meet the standards of the market? Are people comfortable with that? So I'm going to just do an up or down vote here with the straw poll. So raise your hand if you're comfortable with that proposal.
Restate that again. I'm
Yeah,
slow.
restate that.
Okay, all right. So to allow a few carrying, I guess it's not carrying vendors to carry a few products as long as those products are non-consumables and non-growers, with the caveat that there's not going to be, there'll be a cap on the number that an individual vendor can carry, and that all products that are carried still maintain the rules of the market.
What's the cap, though?
3.
Three for now. Yeah.
3?
I'm comfortable with 3 because, well, right, so it would be the person manning the stall, their materials, plus a potential 3 other vendors. That's how I'm thinking of it.
That's 4.
But
Well, it's carrying 3.
only carrying 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what's on the table right now. So I'm going to ask how many people are comfortable with that change. Raise your hand if you're comfortable with it. All right, nobody's comfortable with that. All right, does that mean that everybody's uncomfortable with it?
I think I'm comfortable with it if it was for one stall, and this again goes back to Brian's point about fund or just general revenue. 1 carry per 1 10-foot stall, 2 additional carries beyond that for an additional 10-foot stall. Does that make sense? So in 1 10-foot by 10-foot stall, you could have 1 seller and 1 carry. And then if you added a secondary stall, you could have 2 additional carries for non-food, non-producer products only.
So it'd be 2 total then, Tegan?
Yeah, so it would be a 2 max on each 10 by 10 stall, and they'd have to buy or purchase a second one for an additional 2.
Okay.
Basically, you'd have 2 people in that stall selling their goods together, 2 people going together. And then if there's 2 more people in another stall. How you guys are saying that?
Yes, that's the proposal I believe that Tegan was saying.
Okay.
Okay, so how many people are comfortable with that?
Yeah,
Everybody's
I would be.
comfortable with it? All right. Gary, what about you? You're muted, so you want to say yay or nay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right. Brian, do you have what you need?
Yeah, sure. Yes, yes, I do.
Okay. All right. Let's,
You know, you're going to be the bad guy, Brian.
That's all right. I'm usually the bad guy anyway, so.
Brian, I'm not working at Blue Moon this year, so I can be the bad guy if you want me to.
All right, there you go. No, I mean, and again, like, I will be honest with you. I thought this over really hard, and I wasn't even sure I wanted to like propose the change because, yeah, it does kind of complicate things. But I do like the idea of kind of limiting the number of carries per stall, and increasing that stall requirement, but still charging them a fee. It's money.
What happens, just devil's advocate, what happens if they maintain the 30-foot requirement?
Yeah, then we probably, well, in regards to the carrying policy,
Well, because if you got 2 people, you're going to have 20 foot instead of 10 foot.
yeah, okay, so the big advantage to the carrying policy is that the second person doesn't actually need to be there, right?
But Tegan just put in his recommendation, they got to have another 10 foot.
Right.
But they don't necessarily have to be there.
Yeah.
So for
But it's space, 10 foot. So you took 10 foot out of that 30-foot gap. So that means less vendors. I
but
guess.
if it's just one person selling for their stuff plus 3 carriers and they have two spaces, they don't need a space between them because it's just the one person selling.
No, they need 2.
Yeah,
They need
they
spaces.
speak too, but there doesn't have to be a space between them. So it
Right. I get that. No, I get that.
I mean,
But before, one tent was carrying 3 or 4 people with 10 foot. Now one tent's going to have to be 20 foot wide with 3 or 4 people. Does that make sense?
yes.
right. So
you
it's the same situation as having a single vendor who buys 2 tents, right? Like that 20 foot is going to be their space. And then from the outside edges of that would be, the 30 foot. And actually, it's potentially more money if the carry is there because they'll get charged this $200 fee per carry. So that's 300, three charges plus the 2 space fees. That's buckets of money. Not buckets, potentially buckets. I know we're not supposed to worry about that, but I do.
All right, the next item is for the 2021 regular schedule.
whoa, we're going to vote on that?
Well, it's not really, if you want to vote on it, we can vote on it. That's fine. Heather Ann, you want to call the roll on?
Because Brian's going to be executed here and probably the rest of us. So we need to yay or nay it.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Okay. Let's see, who do we have here? Well, are we doing this like officially,
Restate it.
Mary Alice? Do we have to have a motion in a second too then?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the new policy for carrying that we worked out. Anybody like to move that?
Taken.
Are you moving that, Stan, or are you asking Tegan if he would move it?
I'm asking Tegan if he would, and then I'll second it if he.
Also
I'm not
move.
good. I'm not good with words.
I so move.
I'll second.
All right, so moved by Tegan and seconded by Stan. Any discussion?
But we need to restate the motion.
Okay, so our motion, Tegan, do you want to state the motion?
The motion is that there be a maximum limit on non-food, non-produced vendor stalls to 1 individual, 1 carry. If someone wishes to carry beyond that, there is a 10 by 10 addition where 3 to 4 additional vendors may be included. There's an additional space fee on the the second vendor, and it is limited to non-producer, non-food vendors at the market. I think I covered it.
Nicely said.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Kane,
Aye. Yes.
Mr. Miles.
Yep.
Mr. Shetty.
Diane have a comment?
Uh,
Oh, she was just agreeing. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in. Good.
Okay, Mr. O'Brien. And Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Ms. Wu.
Yes. All right. The last item on the agenda is the schedule for the 2021 regular meeting schedule. So it would be on the 3rd Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. in June, September, December, and then in 2022 in March.
I'll move to keep it the same.
Second it.
All right, moved by Stan and seconded by Kent. Any discussion?
Can you just repeat the month? I'm sorry, Mary Alice.
Yeah, no problem. The months are March, June, September, and December on the 3rd Wednesday at 5:30.
That's perfect.
Okay. All right. Heather Ann, you want to call the roll?
All right, Ms. Kane? Okay. Mr. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Shetty?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yep.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Ms. Lou?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, that carries. And the last item is a motion for adjournment for tonight.
So moved.
Moved by
Seconded.
Ted and seconded by Kent. All right, please call the roll.
Ms. Kane? Oh, I can't.
What are we doing here? I was writing down some.
That's okay. We've motioned to adjourn.
Am I
I
supposed to?
have one question for
Oh,
everybody.
okay.
There was a comment in there about if it reopens to do in-person meetings. I love this. Let's always do Zoom. I mean, I know it's already over with, but I mean, I know you smile and laugh, but travel time's an hour and a half for me. 2 ways, that's 3 hours plus cleaning up. That's a half a day for me. I love this. You see what I'm saying?
I'm gonna second that motion, even though.
Well,
we can't
do nothing now, Tegan, but I
Part of
forgot
that
to
has
bring
to
that up. I
do.
just-
Part of that has to do with the rules. So I think that is something that might be brought up for all boards and commissions, right? So the rules are that
Okay.
you have to physically be present. So if we change it for one, we have to change it for all. So I think that's a broader conversation, but I have heard other people saying that they would like some kind of hybrid especially for people who live quite a distance away from the building. So
Okay, just.
I'll bring that up
wanted
at
to bring
City
it up.
Council. Yep, thank you. All right, Heather Ann.
All right. Ms. Kane, was that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Miles?
Yes.
Mr. Shetty?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yep.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Ms. Lou?
Yes.
All righty.
All right, that motion carries. Everybody enjoy. Hopefully March will stop being rainy soon. Have a good evening.